Welcome to Life Brand Management Podcast with your girl, Brittany. Hey, aka BC Starks, and I'm back with episode 12 of my podcast. And today I wanted to talk about what it means to live in the end. Live in the end of the wish fulfilled. This is a concept that is often discussed by great philosopher Neville Goddard and his teachings on the law of assumption. And it's something that I'm finding to be at the forefront of my lessons lately. And I just wanted to share some of the insights that I've gained as I'm practicing living in the end. So for me, one of the things I realize is so important, and it's a theme that has blanketed the past few years for many of us who are just realizing the interchanges that are happening, and also how that has been influencing or also been experienced by the collective. And that is the notion that we are well beyond the era of just consuming knowledge for the sake of consuming knowledge. As Dr. Joe Dispenza likes to tell it, we are in the era of demonstration, right? We are well beyond reading books for the sake of reading books. We are well beyond, entertaining things like religion or philosophies and theories. We're beyond it. We're in the era where we have been so overly saturated with information. There's so much information, and we can grow in overwhelm. And it's actually been happening for a lot of people, where it's information overload, because now it's not enough to know. Now we want to know how. Right? As Dr. Joe Dispenza puts it, this is the era of demonstration and knowing how to apply the philosophies and how to actually use the theories and things in our day-to-day lives. And so for me, that's exactly the path that I've been on. That's the season that I'm currently in, is, talking less, doing a lot less, just frivolous action, but demonstrating, using the things that I'm learning along my journey. And I share a lot about some of the tools that I use in previous podcasts, but as it pertains to just the day-to-day of what it means and what it looks like to live in the end. So in a previous podcast, I shared how I use tools like inner conversations, which really help me on a day-to-day basis as I process my life and the things that are currently in front of me, right? As Neville teaches, inner conversations are a wonderful way to recognize the power of revision and the power of seeing things differently. Because as I've mentioned before, and if you're familiar with these teachings, thoughts and emotions are what create in our reality. And so in understanding this, I get to apply tools like inner conversation on a day-to-day basis. And that looks like the process of, for example, if I'm looking at something that I see as a challenge in my reality, I, on the moment, can then grow in my awareness that, hey, I'm seeing this thing. It seems like a problem, or perhaps it is a problem. But instead of just accepting that it is a problem that is permanent or fixated, I shift my perception to something more tangible that I can receive as a possibility. Meaning, although this problem appears in front of me, I could see it differently. I can open my mind and my consciousness to accept that a new possibility or a different potential can exist. And it's not enough for me to just think about the new possibility or potential. Neville challenges us to think further. He says, do not think of the problem, do not think of the solution or potential, think from the solution or the potential. So what that means for me is that I use my tools like inner conversation to not only think of something new and improved or a solution presenting itself, but I think from the solution. I think from the improvement. And that's me creating an imaginal scene, right? Because I talked about how all day throughout the day, we're all on autopilot with our imagination, with our inner dialogue. We are thinking and having inner conversations all throughout the day anyway, on every single subject that is in our reality. And so people like Neville Goddard teach us to not just let that run on autopilot, because those inner conversations and things are coming from your subconscious mind, which really run the show of your life. He talks about how there's the conscious mind, which is the mind that knows or has knowledge. And then there's the subconscious mind, which is the awareness of memories and experiences and the things that keep you alert when your conscious mind is not really able to grasp certain things. So the subconscious mind is very much your program. It's very much your program. It runs on autopilot. And as Neville says, no matter how much willpower you use in your reality, nothing trumps the subconscious programming. So it behooves you to understand like what beliefs you hold at the core level, because no matter how many times you affirm or tell yourself that you believe something, ultimately you're going to see what you believe through the happenings in your reality, through the way in which you make decisions, right? Because all of that comes from your subconscious mind. Your decision making doesn't necessarily come from your intellect. Sorry about that, guys. There's a motorcycle in my background. But your decision making doesn't come from your intellect. It comes from your subconscious, which is a program that is a series of experiences and thoughts and emotions that pretty much runs thoughts and emotions that we've gathered throughout our journeys. And so with that being said, which was a lot, the day-to-day can look like revising on the spot things that are unfavorable, ways in which you see people in circumstances in your reality not working for you, not agreeing with you, that in turn, you open yourself up to miracle-mindedness. You open yourself up to the possibility of new potentials, and don't just think of those things, but think from it. So see yourself in a better position. See the person or people that you're dealing with more favorable connections and interactions. So don't just see it, right? Actually put yourself in the vision, because again, we're thinking from, not just thinking of. And so for inner conversations, that looks like, instead of being angry with the person who's sitting in front of you, which is easier said than done, right? But instead of being angry, if you can catch yourself in the moment and say, hey, you know what? I want to see this different. And so in my mind's eye, whether it's in front of the person at that time or when you removed yourself and you're in a quiet space, you can envision a scene where you and that person are having more harmonious conversations. And don't just think of it, but think from it. Like, hear that person telling you things that you would much rather hear from them. Hear that person confirming through their words and their conversation with you that things are a lot more harmonious by hearing them say kind things to you in their voice. And if you can even go a step further, as Neville says, by giving it the tones of reality, give it the feelings of reality by seeing their facial expressions if you've learned that, or memorize what they look like, and give it the tones of touch. If you can recall what certain things may feel like if you're actually thinking from the scene of this conversation taking place. And these are the things that help us to implant in our subconscious mind the possibility of that miracle or that improved circumstance or relationship happening. And so the reason this is so powerful is because it kind of hacks your brain, right? Because the subconscious mind is such a clever mechanism in that the way that you program it is through repetition and also through feeling. And our brains are so fascinating in that our brain does not know the difference between something that is real and something that is imagined. And so these inner conversations are actually so powerful that if repeated over time, we can literally trick our subconscious minds into believing that we had that experience of improvement, whether it's in a circumstance, whether it's in a relationship or not. And some of you listening may actually remember a time in your life where something was going on and you just imagined or had an idea that it happened in a better way, and you might not have even realized it at that time, but fast forward, it ended up playing out in a better way for you because you allowed yourself to accept that a new possibility of improvement could happen. Right? And we do this stuff on autopilot. But the beautiful thing about being an intentional creator is that we're learning more about how these mechanisms work. So it's not just something that you're doing on a fluke. When you learn how the mechanism works, you can then do it on purpose. And then you can do it in practice, right? And practice over time creates mastery. And so as I talk about a lot in my course, my intentional creation course, which by the way is still available for $222 until it's no longer available at that price. But I talk about that in my intentional creation course. I talk about how we use the wisdom of our experiences, no matter what we've gone through, to then help us or be the catalyst for new and improved experiences and therefore a new and improved existence. Right. And I use some of the spiritual teachings that I'm talking about on this podcast, especially, and then also some of the teachings of which I've come across that have really helped me. And so we are intentional creators when we can use this information to demonstrate in our day-to-day lives. And I created the course because I call myself a manifesting mentor as I am processing these demonstrations for myself and just sharing feedback. One of the things that I appreciate about people like Dr. Joe Dispenza is that they talk about the importance of evidence, right? We live in an era where there's so much information, and yes, there can be information overload, but what we're wanting is not just to know how, but we want the evidence of the people who have done it, right? Because that evidence is what gives us permission to try it out ourselves. You know, it's enough to talk. You could talk about it. You can read about it. But imagine people actually doing it and then getting results that are successful, right? That is how we not only learn, but it's how we initiate our own transformation, initiate our own evolution and change. And so my course is a representation of that. It's a representation of me demonstrating and processing that demonstration and having gotten success in certain areas, which I share details on and giving examples from my real life. And then also, hopefully, that encourages and inspires you to go on your own journey. Should you be a student of my course, it inspires you to go on your own journey and try it out for yourself. You know, a lot of our spiritual teachers always would point in the direction of not only reading the word or not only hearing it from third parties, but experiencing it for ourselves. You know, it's not enough to be a hearer of the word. We need to be doers. And this is absolutely the era of demonstration. And so I just wanted to hop on and talk about that today, because when you talk about, or when we conceive these concepts of living in the end, a lot of people don't know what that means. A lot of people just, you know, we talk about the imagination and we talk about feeling and we talk about speaking things into existence. And that's all fine and dandy, right? But imagine applying those things moment to moment, because that's what it truly means to live in the end. It means you're showing up as the version of you who already has the desired outcome. You're showing up as that version, which means that you're going to start noticing when your thoughts are not in alignment with whatever it is you desire. And as you notice it, it's not enough to just observe it. It's not enough to be to push against it. You don't want to push against it. But what you want to do is you want to accept when you're not in alignment with it, when you're not feeling in alignment with it, when you're not thinking in alignment with it. And you want to use tools that are available to you. And I talk a lot about those tools in my course. And I talk a lot about some of those tools on this podcast. You want to use those tools for yourself, because the ultimate goal is to prove to yourself that you are who you think you are. As Neville says all the time, there's no one to prove but self. There's no one to prove anything to in this world except yourself. And you want to make sure, if you're anything like me, that you prove to yourself that you are at least who you think you are. And I think when you embark on this journey and you find yourself demonstrating, and over time you overcome and you push through and you persist and you persevere and you see your goals manifested, that you not only convince yourself that you are who you think you are, but you end up revealing to yourself that you're even much more, so much more than what you thought initially. And that is the beauty of this journey. I'm inspired by people like Dr. Joe, and I keep interchanging him and Neville because those are my two most powerful teachers at this moment. I try not to overwhelm myself with too much information. And what I'm realizing is there is a oneness in all of my studies. No matter what books I've read, no matter who has been my main teachers, there's a oneness in all of it. But for me right now, this phase of my journey, these are the two teachers that are resonating. And I go back and forth because the information it's not more or new information being presented to me. It's merely me gaining a different perspective on the information every time I revisit it. And that's when I feel inspired to come on and hop on a podcast and share with you what I'm learning along my journey. And so I pray that it is something that is inspiring to you as well, so that you can be like I'm being and like some of my favorite teachers were, which is demonstrators. I pray that you are activated in your own life to try out the things that you say you believe in and put it to use and help yourself make your life better, right? Help yourself make your life more of what it can be. Tap into that infinite potential that we always talk about and we hear about. It's not enough to just hear about it. Now it's time to strive for it and see if we can actually accomplish it. See if you can tap into a new potential. And there's so many examples of people who have literally changed their lives to versions of themselves that are almost unrecognizable compared to the older versions. So that means that there are examples of it in our world. And if you look for the example, you'll always find it. And if you find that example, let it be inspiration. Let it help you in your life. Let it be a catalyst to your own journey. And let it enrich you in ways that you probably never considered before. That's all I got for today. I hope that this message can resonate with someone, and I hope that you too understand the workings of living in the end is about the moment-to-moment awareness, the moment-to-moment solutions that we bring to that awareness, recognizing when I'm not in alignment, and then as I'm recognize that, use the tools from the things that I'm learning to actually demonstrate. Try it out, practice it, stay consistent with it, be disciplined. And even on the hard days, let it be what it is, and then pick yourself right back up. Because again, it's not about perfection, it's about frequency. It's about how frequent, no matter how many times you fall down, that you get back up again, that you challenge yourself to go a little bit further. And as Dr. Joe would say, that is when you are acting out of greatness. That is when you are practicing greatness. That is what great people do. Again, thank you for your listening ear. And until next time, peace out.